The hotel receipt fell out of Elise's purse like a confession letter. I wasn't snooping, just helping her carry groceries when the thing fluttered to our kitchen floor like some twisted origami bird. The Grandview Hotel. Room 4 and 12. 3 hours, Tuesday afternoon. The same Tuesday, she claimed to be in budget meetings with her boss, Colin. I picked up the slip of paper, studying it with the same attention I gave property deeds in my real estate business. Every detail mattered. Every number told a story. "Grant, can you grab the milk from the car?" Elise called from the pantry, her voice bright and cheerful, the same voice that had been telling me lies for who knows how long. "Sure thing, sweetheart," I replied, sliding the receipt into my wallet. My hands stayed steady. 20 years in real estate teaches you to keep your poker face when the foundation starts cracking. I walked to our driveway, past the perfectly manicured lawn Elise insisted we maintain, past the German sedan she demanded we lease, and stood next to my truck. The evening air felt different somehow, sharper, like the moment before a storm when the pressure drops and your ears pop. Inside the car, I found more than milk. Tucked under the passenger seat was another receipt. Same hotel, different date. This one from last week, during her supposed client lunch with the Henderson account. My phone buzzed. A text from my business partner, Jake. "How's the married life treating you, buddy?" I stared at the message, then at the receipts in my hand. "Just peachy," I typed back. Back inside, Elise was arranging flowers in a vase. White lilies she'd bought at the market. She hummed while she worked, completely at ease. The picture of domestic bliss. "These meetings with Colin have been running long lately," I said, setting the milk on the counter. She didn't miss a beat. "Oh, you know how it is. The Peterson campaign is demanding. Colin's a perfectionist." Colin Sharp. I'd met him twice at company parties. Tall, expensive suits, the kind of smile that probably worked wonders on impressionable marketing executives. He drove a Tesla and wore a Rolex that cost more than most people's cars. "Must be nice having such a dedicated boss," I said. Elise looked up from her flowers, studying my face. For a second, I thought she might crack. Instead, she smiled that practice smile she used with difficult clients. "He's very hands-on with his team." "I bet he is." That night, I lay awake listening to Elise breathe beside me. She slept peacefully, one arm thrown across my chest like nothing had changed, like she wasn't living a double life, but I was already 3 steps ahead, planning my next move. In real estate, you learn that information is currency. The more you know about a property's history, its flaws, its hidden problems, the better position you're in to negotiate. My marriage apparently had some serious structural issues I needed to investigate. The next morning, Elise kissed my cheek before leaving for work. "Another long day ahead," she said. "Don't wait up if I'm late." "I'll try to contain my excitement," I replied. After she left, I called Vivienne Carter, the best attorney in town and an old friend from college. Vivienne specialized in messy situations and had a reputation for being ruthless when necessary. "Grant Miller," she said when she answered. "This is either a social call or you need someone destroyed legally. Given that you never call me socially, I'm guessing option 2. "I need to discuss some hypothetical scenarios," I said. "Hypothetically, of course. My office, 2 o'clock? "Perfect." I spent the morning running numbers on a new property development, but my mind kept wandering to those hotel receipts. How long had this been going on? How many lies had I swallowed without question? At 2 o'clock sharp, I sat across from Vivienne in her downtown office. She wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment and had the kind of sharp intelligence that made opposing lawyers reconsider their career choices. "So," she said, leaning back in her leather chair, "tell me about these hypothetical scenarios." I laid out everything. The receipts, the late meetings, the sudden interest in working overtime with Colin. Vivienne listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "Hypothetically speaking," she said when I finished, "if someone wanted to protect their assets in a situation like this, they'd need documentation, photos, receipts, witness statements. The more evidence, the stronger the position. And if someone wanted to make sure their spouse couldn't clean out joint accounts while they gathered this evidence, hypothetically, that someone might want to quietly restructure their finances, move assets, establish separate accounts, all perfectly legal if done properly." I nodded. "How long would something like that take?" "For someone with your business background, maybe a week to 10 days, hypothetically." "And if this hypothetical someone wanted to ensure their spouse faced consequences for their actions?" Vivienne's smile was sharp as a blade. "Well, that depends on how creative this hypothetical someone wanted to get. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Devon Martinez had worked the front desk at the Grandview Hotel for 3 years. He was 24, studying business at the community college, and had the kind of observational skills that made him perfect for what I needed. "Mr. Miller," he said when I approached the marble counter that Thursday afternoon. "Checking in today?" "Actually, I'm hoping you can help me with something." I slid a $50 bill across the counter. "I'm trying to track some business expenses for tax purposes. My wife's been meeting clients here, and I need to verify dates and times." Devon glanced around the lobby, then pocketed the money. "What kind of information are you looking for?" "Room 412, the past month or so. Any records of who was using it and when." His fingers moved across the computer keyboard. "That's one of our executive suites. Popular for business meetings?" He paused, reading the screen. "Looks like it's been booked regularly. Same credit card, different names on the registry." "Different names?" "Yeah, sometimes it's registered to Elise Miller, sometimes to Colin Sharp, but always the same card ending in 4738. My card. The business account Elise had access to for legitimate work expenses." "How often are we talking?" "Twice a week for the past 6 weeks. Always afternoon bookings, usually 3 to 4 hours." I handed him another 50. "I don't suppose you have security footage from the lobby?" Devon looked nervous. "I can't give you actual footage, but I can tell you what I've observed. Professional curiosity, you understand?" "I understand perfectly." They arrive separately, usually 15 minutes apart. She comes first, goes straight to the elevator. He follows, never stops at the desk. They leave the same way, but he always goes first. "Very professional," I said. "Very discreet," Devon agreed. That evening, I started restructuring our finances. It was easier than I'd expected. Most of our assets were tied to my business, and I had legitimate reasons to move money around. New investment opportunities, tax planning, business expansion. Elise never paid attention to the financial details anyway. By Friday, I'd secured our savings, moved the valuable assets, and established a paper trail that would make Vivienne proud. If Elise wanted to play games, she'd find herself playing with house money while I held all the cards. "You're quiet tonight," Elise said over dinner. She'd made her famous chicken parmesan, the dish she always cooked when she felt guilty about something. "Just thinking about work. The Morrison project is getting complicated." "Anything I can help with? I'm pretty good with complicated situations." I looked across the table at my wife of 8 years. She wore a blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, and her hair was styled the way I'd always liked it. She looked beautiful, concerned, loving. The perfect picture of a devoted wife. "I think I can handle it," I said. Saturday morning brought a text from an unknown number. "Your wife is at the Grandview. Thought you should know. A friend." I stared at the message. Either I had an ally I didn't know about, or this was some kind of setup. Either way, it was information I could use. I drove downtown and parked across from the hotel. Sure enough, Elise's car was in the parking structure. According to her calendar, she was at a yoga class across town. 20 minutes later, Colin's Tesla pulled into the structure. He emerged wearing casual clothes, jeans, and a polo shirt that probably cost more than most people's weekly salary. He walked into the hotel like he owned the place. I sat in my truck for 2 hours, watching the entrance. They emerged separately, just as Devon had described. Elise looked flushed and happy. Colin looked smug. That night, Elise came home with a story about running errands and meeting a college friend for coffee. She showed me a shopping bag from a boutique downtown as proof of her afternoon activities. "Find anything good?" I asked. "Just a scarf. You know how it is. Sometimes you need a little retail therapy." "I know exactly how it is," I said. Sunday morning, I called Jake and asked him to meet me for coffee. Jake had been my business partner for 5 years and my friend for longer. He was the kind of guy who noticed things and remembered details. "You look terrible," he said when he sat down across from me at the downtown cafe. "Thanks for the pep talk." "Seriously, what's going on? You've been weird all week." I told him everything. The receipts, the hotel meetings, the lies. Jake listened with the same attention he gave to property inspections. Thorough and methodical. "Man, I'm sorry," he said when I finished. "That's rough." "I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm looking for advice." "What kind of advice?" "The kind that helps me make sure she doesn't get away with it." Jake leaned forward. "Grant, I've known you for years. You're not the revenge type. Maybe it's time I learned to be." Monday morning, I put my plan into motion. Step 1 was simple. Let Elise think she was winning. I left the hotel receipts where she might find them, then waited to see how she'd react. If she was innocent, she'd ask questions. If she was guilty, she'd find a way to explain them away, or better yet, try to cover her tracks. She chose option 3. She said nothing and started paying more attention to her belongings. Tuesday, I followed her to work. Elise's marketing firm occupied the 3rd floor of a glass building downtown, all modern furniture and motivational posters. I watched from the parking garage as she went inside, then waited. At 11:30, Colin's Tesla appeared. He parked in the visitor section and walked into the building like he belonged there. 30 minutes later, they both emerged and drove separately to the Grandview Hotel. I called Devon from my truck. Room 412 busy today? Booked for the next 3 hours. He confirmed, same clients as usual. Perfect. I drove to Colin's office building and found his Tesla in the executive parking area. The car was pristine, detailed to perfection. It probably meant more to him than most people's relationships. I walked around the vehicle, noting the custom wheels, the spotless paint job, the vanity license plate that read Closer 1. Everything about it screamed ego and insecurity wrapped in expensive metal. From my keychain, I selected the sharpest key I owned, the one to my first rental property, worn smooth by years of use. I dragged it along the passenger side of the Tesla, creating a thin but unmistakable line from headlight to taillight. On the windshield, I left a business card with a handwritten note. Karma has excellent credit. GM. Then I drove home and waited. The call came at 4:30. Colin's number, which I'd memorized from Elise's phone. Miller, he said when I answered. We need to talk. Colin Sharp, I replied. What can I do for you? You know exactly what you can do. Meet me at Murphy's Bar in 20 minutes. Murphy's was a dive bar on the wrong side of downtown, the kind of place where people went to have conversations they didn't want overheard. Perfect for what I had in mind. I arrived first and chose a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. Colin walked in 15 minutes later, his expensive clothes looking out of place among the working-class crowd. He spotted me immediately and walked over with the kind of swagger that suggested he thought he held all the cards. You scratched my car, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Did I? That's terrible. You should be more careful where you park. Don't play games with me, Miller. I know what you think you know. I signaled the bartender for 2 beers, then leaned back in my seat. Enlighten me. What do I think I know? Colin's jaw tightened. Your wife is unhappy. Has been for months. She needed someone who understood her, someone who could appreciate what she brings to the table. And that someone is you? That someone is me. The bartender brought our beers. I took a long sip, studying Colin's face. He was handsome in a generic way, like a stock photo model. The kind of man who probably thought his looks and money made him irresistible. Tell me something, Colin. What exactly does Elise bring to the table? She's brilliant, creative, ambitious, everything a man could want. And yet she married me. She made a mistake. People grow, they change. She realizes now that she settled. I nodded thoughtfully. So you're doing her a favor, helping her correct this mistake. I'm helping her find happiness. In hotel rooms? Colin's face flushed. What we have is real. It's not some sordid affair. What you have, I said, leaning forward, is my wife. In hotel rooms I'm paying for, using credit cards with my name on them. That makes it my business. She's going to leave you anyway. You might as well make it easy on everyone. I finished my beer and stood up. Colin, let me explain something to you. I've been in real estate for 20 years. I know how to spot a bad investment, and I know how to cut my losses. But I also know how to protect what's mine. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Stay away from my wife, stay away from my credit cards, and stay away from me. Otherwise, that scratch on your car is going to look like a love tap. I left him sitting in the booth, probably planning his next move. That was fine. I was already 3 steps ahead. That night, Elise came home with another story about working late. She seemed nervous, distracted. She kept checking her phone and jumping at small noises. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, she said quickly. Just tired. Long day. Maybe you should cut back on those client meetings. All that overtime can't be good for you. She looked at me sharply. What do you mean? I mean you've been working a lot of extra hours lately, with Colin. He's my boss, Grant. Sometimes the job requires extra time. I'm sure it does. Later that night, while Elise slept, I went through her phone. She'd gotten sloppy with her passwords. Our anniversary date, which would have been sweet if she wasn't using it to hide an affair. The text messages told the whole story. 6 weeks of planning meetings that weren't meetings, lunch dates that lasted all afternoon, and increasingly intimate conversations about their future together. The most recent exchange was from that evening. Colin. He knows something. We need to be more careful. Elise, what did he say to you? Colin, nothing specific, but he keyed my car. Elise, maybe we should cool it for a while. Colin, no way. I'm not letting him intimidate us. We just need to be smarter. Elise, I don't want this to get ugly. Colin, it's already ugly. The question is whether we're going to let him control the situation. I screenshotted the entire conversation and sent it to myself, then deleted the evidence from her sent messages. By morning, I'd have everything I needed to finish this properly. But first, I had a few more moves to make. Wednesday morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day doing reconnaissance. I followed Elise to her office, then drove to Colin's building and waited in the parking garage. At 10:15, he emerged from the elevator and walked to his Tesla. The scratch was gone. He'd probably had it detailed overnight, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. He kept looking around, checking for threats. I followed him to a high-end gym across town, the kind of place where membership costs more than most people's rent. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched him work out with the intensity of someone trying to burn off stress and anger. This was where I met Rico Vasquez, the gym's assistant manager. Rico was in his 30s, built like a linebacker, and had the kind of street smarts that came from growing up in the wrong neighborhoods. "You're not a member," he said when I approached the front desk. "No, but I'm thinking about joining. Nice facility. Best in the city. You interested in a tour?" "Actually, I'm more interested in information." Rico's expression sharpened. "What kind of information?" I slid a $100 bill across the counter. "The kind about Colin Sharp and the woman he brings here." Rico glanced around, then pocketed the money. "They work out together twice a week. Very friendly, if you know what I mean." "How friendly?" "The kind of friendly that makes other members uncomfortable. Lots of touching, whispering, disappearing into the private training rooms." "Private training rooms?" "Soundproof, locked from the inside, officially for one-on-one sessions with trainers." "And unofficially?" Rico shrugged. "What happens in private stays private, usually." I handed him my business card. "If you ever feel like sharing more details, give me a call." That afternoon, I drove to Elise's office building and parked where I could watch the entrance. At 3 o'clock, she emerged with a tall, blonde woman I recognized from company parties. Paige something, one of her colleagues. They walked to a coffee shop 2 blocks away and sat at a table by the window. I found a spot at the counter where I could hear their conversation. "Und getting suspicious," Elise was saying. "He asked about my meetings with Colin." "What did you tell him?" Paige asked. "The usual. Work stuff, client meetings, but he's not buying it." "Maybe you should end it, before things get complicated." Elise shook her head. "I can't. Colin and I have something real. Grant's just safe, boring. Colin makes me feel alive. Alive enough to risk your marriage. My marriage has been over for years. I just didn't want to admit it." Paige leaned forward. "Elise, be careful. Grant's not stupid. If he finds out, he already suspects, but suspecting and proving are 2 different things. And if he proves it, then I'll deal with it. Colin and I have been talking about making this official anyway." I finished my coffee and left before they noticed me. Outside, I sat in my truck and processed what I'd heard. Elise wasn't just having an affair, she was planning to leave me for Colin. The meetings, the lies, the hotel rooms were all just the beginning. That evening, I called Vivienne and arranged to meet her for dinner. We chose a restaurant across town, somewhere we wouldn't be seen by anyone who might report back to Elise. "You look like someone who's been planning a war," Vivienne said when I sat down across from her. "Close enough." I filled her in on everything I'd discovered, the hotel meetings, the gym sessions, the conversation I'd overheard. Vivienne listened with the focused attention of a predator studying prey. "So she's planning to leave you for this Colin character," she said when I finished. "Appears that way. And you want to make sure she doesn't take half your assets when she goes." "I want to make sure she doesn't take anything, and I want her to understand that actions have consequences." Vivienne smiled. "Now you're talking my language. What did you have in mind?" "Public humiliation. Complete social destruction. I want everyone in this town to know exactly what kind of person she is." "That's ambitious, also potentially expensive. I've got money. What I need is strategy. Strategy I can provide. But Grant, once we start down this road, there's no going back. Are you sure this is what you want?" I thought about 8 years of marriage, about the woman I'd trusted with my heart and my future, about the lies and the hotel receipts and the smug expression on Colin's face. "I'm sure." "Then let's talk about how to destroy someone's reputation without getting ourselves in legal trouble." We spent 2 hours planning. By the time we finished, I had a roadmap for the next phase of my revenge. It was elegant, thorough, and completely legal. Most importantly, it was going to be very, very public. Thursday morning, I put the first part of the plan into action. I called Devon at the hotel and arranged to meet him during his lunch break. I need security footage, I told him when we met at a sandwich shop near the hotel. I can't give you actual footage, he said, but I might be able to arrange for you to see it. What would that cost? $500 and a guarantee that my name stays out of whatever you're planning. Done. That afternoon, I sat in the hotel's security office watching grainy footage of my wife and her lover entering and leaving their private meetings. The timestamps correlated perfectly with the receipts I'd found. The evidence was undeniable. Can I get copies of these specific clips? I asked the security supervisor, a retired cop named Frank, who owed Devon a favor. Officially, no. Unofficially, these files sometimes get accidentally copied to external drives. Accidents happen, I agreed. By Thursday evening, I had everything I needed: video evidence, financial records, witness statements, and a detailed timeline of the affair. More importantly, I had a plan for making sure everyone in our social circle knew exactly what Elise and Colin had been doing. The final phase was about to begin. Friday night was the monthly mixer at the Downtown Business Association, held at the rooftop bar of the Meridian Hotel. Every professional in the city would be there, including Elise, Colin, and most of their colleagues. I arrived early and set up in the corner with the best view of the room. I'd brought my laptop and a portable projector, ostensibly for a presentation about my latest development project. What I actually planned to present was something entirely different. Elise walked in at 7:30, wearing a red dress that hugged her curves and heels that made her legs look endless. She looked confident, radiant, like a woman who thought she was winning. Colin followed 10 minutes later, maintaining their usual pretense of arriving separately. I watched them work the room, networking and socializing like the power couple they imagined themselves to be. Elise laughed at something Paige whispered in her ear. Colin shook hands with potential clients and flashed his practiced smile. They had no idea what was coming. At 8:15, the association president called for attention. Before we continue with tonight's festivities, Grant Miller has asked to share some exciting news about his latest project. I stood up and walked to the makeshift presentation area, carrying my laptop and projector. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to share something very important with all of you tonight. The projector screen flickered to life, showing the title slide. Truth in Advertising, a Case Study in Professional Ethics. Elise looked puzzled. Colin frowned. The rest of the room settled in for what they assumed would be a boring business presentation. Tonight, I want to talk about transparency, I began. About honesty in our professional relationships and the importance of trust in business partnerships. I clicked to the next slide, a photo of the Grandview Hotel. Many of you are familiar with the Grandview Hotel downtown. Excellent facilities, very popular for business meetings and client entertainment. Another click, a spreadsheet showing credit card charges. What you might not know is how much some people are spending on these business meetings. 3-hour sessions twice a week for the past 6 weeks, very dedicated to client service. I could see Elise's face turning pale. Colin had stopped smiling. Of course, dedication to service is admirable, but sometimes the nature of that service isn't quite what it appears to be. The next slide showed security footage from the hotel lobby, grainy but unmistakable images of Elise and Colin entering the elevator together. A murmur went through the crowd. Someone gasped. Paige dropped her wine glass. You see, I continued, my voice steady and conversational, transparency matters. When someone claims to be working late on client projects but is actually engaged in different activities, it raises questions about professional integrity. The final slide was a compilation. Hotel receipts, text messages, gym security footage, and time-stamped photos of Colin's Tesla in the hotel parking garage. So, I want to thank everyone here tonight for helping me understand the importance of truth in advertising, especially my wife Elise and her boss Colin, who have been such dedicated advocates for hands-on client service. The room was completely silent. Every phone in the place was out, recording and photographing. Elise stood frozen by the bar, her face white as paper. Colin was pushing through the crowd toward the exit, but people were blocking his path, eager to get better photos and video. Questions? I asked pleasantly. The explosion of noise was immediate. Everyone started talking at once. Shocked exclamations, demands for details, the rapid-fire clicking of camera phones. Social media was about to have a field day. I packed up my projector and laptop, nodded politely to the association president, and walked toward the exit. As I passed Elise, she grabbed my arm. "Grant, please," she whispered. We need to talk. I looked down at her hand on my sleeve, then up at her face. The confident, radiant woman from an hour ago was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood the consequences of her choices. We had 8 years to talk, I said quietly. You chose to spend the last 6 weeks talking to someone else. I gently removed her hand from my arm and continued toward the elevator. Behind me, the chaos continued to build. Phones were ringing, people were shouting questions, and somewhere in the crowd, Colin was probably trying to explain why his Tesla had been parked at a hotel during his supposed business meetings. The elevator doors closed on the sound of Elise's voice, high and desperate, trying to explain the unexplainable to a room full of people who would be gossiping about this for years. Downstairs in the lobby, I walked past the concierge desk and out into the cool evening air. My phone was already buzzing with calls and texts. Friends, colleagues, probably reporters who'd gotten wind of the story. I ignored them all and drove home to the house that would soon be mine alone. The mortgage was in my name, the deed was in my name, and thanks to Vivienne's careful planning, most of our assets were safely protected. Elise would get what she deserved. Nothing except the reputation she'd earned. I poured myself a drink and sat on the back porch, looking out at the yard we'd landscaped together 3 years ago. My phone continued to buzz with notifications. The story was already spreading across social media, complete with photos and video from tonight's presentation. By morning, everyone in the city would know exactly what kind of people Elise and Colin really were. Their careers were finished, their reputations destroyed, their future together tainted by the circumstances of how it began. I raised my glass to the empty yard and smiled. Justice, it turned out, tasted better than revenge. The game was over, and I'd won.